If you didn't already know, I'm quite a big fan of The Strokes. You can blame my friend Aidan for that one. And I don't often think to myself to make content about their music, but then again, they're an artist that I know a lot about, so why shouldn't I? So I'm doing one of the most obvious things you can think of, and that is making a tier list of the Strokes' albums. The Strokes albums? The Strokes' albums? The Strokes' albums? I don't think my opinions are particularly controversial, but I think a few might surprise you, so let's give it a go. Cast your mind back to when it started, the early 2000s, with the album Is This It? Now, interestingly, they've included the Future Present Past EP on here, but they haven't included the Modern Age EP. Because although it includes songs that were then released on Is This It, it was recorded differently, it was mixed differently, and a lot of the songs were at different tempos and had a different feeling. So come on, if you're going to put Future Present Past on here, put the Modern Age on here. Anyway, I think Is This It contains some fantastic songs. This is potentially a hot take, but I think it's quite a hard album to get into. When I first started listening to The Strokes, I really liked their new music because it felt cleaner, it felt clearer cut. But Is This It has quite this down-to-earth, gritty, jagged feeling to it, which I think made it quite hard for me to really get into it, because it did feel, intentionally, quite amateur. I think it sounded quite tinny at times, I think it sounded quite harsh, but actually I've now kind of grown to love that, because it mimics what the lyrics are already saying. Growing up in New York City, youthfulness, relationships, people, the life of the night, that sort of thing. So if you just looked at it as a collection of songs, I'd put it in A. But I think it's S tier, and here's why. When you look at the movement that it was a part of, when you look at the rock scene coming out of the 90s, it was dominated by these grungier sort of sounds, you know, Nirvana, Foo Fighters, a lot of these other 90s grunge bands that emerged. And the Strokes were a part of a movement that was mimicked by bands such as the Libertines, and later groups like Franz Ferdinand and the White Stripes. The alternative rock movement that brought skinny jeans and leather jackets back into fashion. Hell, if you look at the opening lyric on the Arctic Monkeys album, Tranquility Base Hotel and Casino, Alex Turner's first words are, "I just wanted to be one of the Strokes." This gave rise to a completely new era of rock music that we hadn't heard before. It's a high-class album when it comes to songwriting and instrumentation, and the themes that it brings up and holds dear, but when you look at it in a historical context, it's got to be an S-tier album. Next up, Room on Fire, their second album. I'd put it on the same level as Is This It, and so would many people, but for different reasons. The lyrics become a lot more introspective, there's still that flair of New York youthfulness, but there's also now hints of being a bit more inwardly turned. You know, Julian opening the album up by saying, "I want to be forgotten and I don't want to be reminded." It feels a bit darker, it feels a bit more, not sinister, but maybe a bit more gothic. Shadowy is the word that I'd use. It feels like Is This It's antiparticle. Is This It had these very upbeat, bright melodies, these bubbly, fun choruses like on the track of Someday. But Room on Fire brings in these sort of darker elements. You know, the track Reptilia, for example, that is a lot more menacing in some ways compared to anything on Is This It. It's got a lot more of a minor feeling, it feels a lot more rapid, a lot more volatile. And I think this change in tone is done well. I think it's a great album. I struggle to find tracks on here that I don't like. I used to listen to this album when I drove back from my shifts at Tesco in the university holidays. Okay, next up, First Impressions of Earth. You can already kind of see where this is going, I think. I heard that the Strokes were trying to go for more of a stadium rock feeling with this album. Obviously they were a big band and they did a lot for the music scene, but I don't think they were pulling these big stadium shows like bands like Foo Fighters were. They didn't have this big anthemic sound, and I think First Impressions of Earth was their attempt to achieve that. People are very quick to put this album in the trash category, and I don't think it's trash. I think there are some good songs on there, but equally I think there are some bad songs. I'm a Strokes fan, but even I will admit, 15 minutes should have been cut off the album. It's a very long, very bloated album. It feels like they were just throwing everything at the wall until something stuck. Even the leading track here, You Only Live Once, I don't think too much of. I think it just lacks emotion. Obviously it's a bit shoutier, it's a bit more big and brash, but I think it just lacks a bit of a personal, emotive touch because of that. And I think its demo version, I'll Try Anything Once, is one of the most heartfelt, meaningful songs that Julian has ever written. And I am still mad that they've taken it off Spotify. God, I am furious. I personally don't really like Killing Lies, Fear of Sleep and 15 Minutes. But on the other hand, there are some tracks that I think are excellent. Razorblade, Eyes of the World, Evening Sun. Electricityscape has got this more gothic feeling to it, which I think kind of works. Especially with this pre-chorus guitar riff that does have an air of grandeur to it. And Ask Me Anything, albeit a bit boring in some senses, was the start of the Strokes working with these simpler songs that you get on every album. Razorblade I think is an amazing track too. I love the riff on that, I just love the sliding guitar riff. Juicebox can be kind of hard to get into, but once you do, I think it's actually quite interesting from a music theory point of view. And Red Light is a great track as well. So I'm not going to say it's trash, but I'm going to say it's D tier. It had a series of things it wanted to achieve. It didn't quite achieve them, but the things that it did well were the things that the Strokes were already good at. Tracks like Razorblade and Red Light. So I guess this album is a good lesson in, sure, experiment. It's good to experiment, but also stick to what you know in some senses. Next up, Angles. I'm quite a big Angles enjoyer. It's a definite change in direction for the band. You've got some more interesting guitar tones here. You've got some more interesting harmonisations on tracks like Metabolism and You're So Right. Undercover of Darkness moves in a lot more poppy of a direction, I suppose. With such an upbeat chorus, it just gets stuck in my head the moment I think about it. But Julian also gets a lot more abstract with his lyric writing. And you see this a bit on First Impressions of Earth with tracks like Eyes of the World, which tries to portray this dystopian future. Cities to vaporise, a child to criticise, leaders to scandalise, enemies to neutralise. It's very abstract, it's got a strong message to it. And Angles kind of does the same thing, with tracks like Machu Picchu's lyrics feeling a bit more like that as well. I mean, just look at the last chorus of Machu Picchu. Life turns to dust and rain turns to rust. Gossip is a truth and money pays for the lies we trust. Your love is a surprise, homeless saints are in disguise. I'm just trying to find a nice place for you and I. Like, it's got weight to it. And I also think Gratisfaction is the most underrated Strokes track in existence. It is an amazing song. So I don't think it's revolutionary. I don't think it's going to be an album that stands the test of time as such, but I think it's fantastic. I think it's got some great tracks, and I think it was a move in the right direction for the band. So for that reason, I'm going to put it in B tier. Like a 2-1, you know, I would listen to that happily. Next up, Comedown Machine. I saw a video on the Strokes, and someone said that Comedown Machine was their best album since Is This It? Calm down. I think it gets a lot of hate. Now, it does sound tired. I know some people said that they just put it out to fulfill their contract with RCA. And I know during the Angles and Comedown Machine era there was a lot of tension in the band. There was a loss of passion. At least that's what you hear. And it does feel kind of tired at times. Even the opening 3 tracks do feel like they're lacking some sort of flair. I'm not saying it's all bad, there are some bangers. Welcome to Japan I think's really good. Chances and Happy Ending I think are quite interesting. And Call It Fate, Call It Karma, albeit experimental, I think is quite beautiful in its own way. So because of that, I'm going to put it in C tier. Sure, it's got its flops, but its worst moments are more listenable than First Impressions of Earth's worst moments. Next up, we got the Future Present Past EP. Don't know if you can count this as an album, but I'm going to count it anyway. So this comes after the band officially took a hiatus after Comedown Machine, and we got this 3 years later in 2016. It feels like they were doing this because they were friends that wanted to start jamming again, and I like that feeling. Julian gets a lot more abstract with the lyrics here again, which I think really works, especially having just come out of releasing Tyranny with The Voids. This feels a lot more like friends getting together, jamming, wanting to make music again, as opposed to feeling like they have to. Drag Queen I think is a borderline unlistenable song, but the other 2 are great. Oblivious, I could belt that chorus from the top of my lungs. I'm not going to. And that track's meant to represent the music they currently want to make, and then Threat of Joy being the music that they did make in the past. But I still think it's really good, I like it. So, Future Present Past EP, I'm going to put in B tier. Actually no, I'm going to put it in C tier, purely because of Drag Queen. I just really don't like Drag Queen. And then finally, the Grammy Award winning The New Abnormal. I think this album does everything right. It doesn't get too ahead of itself, it doesn't try and bloat itself out, it's only got 9 tracks I think. It really feels like an instinctual album, and it feels like every member of the band gets to play their part. Julian has some amazing, heartbreaking lyrics on tracks like At the Door. but you also get these catchy, addictive guitar riffs on the opening track, The Adults Are Talking. And Ode to the Mets is this nostalgic, reflective feeling that we haven't got on any Strokes tracks before. Brooklyn Bridge to Chorus introduces these very 80s synths, and Bad Decisions equally has quite an old-time feel. Why Are Sundays So Depressing is just an S-tier tune as well, and I think Julian's singing here is just the best it's ever been. It's not gritty rock like the first two albums, but it is actually quite beautiful at times. Look at the track Selfless. A lot of people will say an A-tier album because they think it is good but not legendary, but I'm going to say it's S-tier. I can't think of a moment on here that I don't like, and I think every moment on here is consistently good, great, or better. You can have a debate about Eternal Summer if you like, but I personally like Eternal Summer. I feel like, as much as it feels like a long drag, I feel like that's what it was meant to do, and it achieved that quite well. Even if that's not for everyone, it had a goal, and I think it achieved it well. I think Rick Rubin was a big player in this album's success. You can't ignore the producer here. I think he did a fantastic job of getting the band together and really getting the best out of their songwriting ability. So what do you guys think? Do you agree with what I said? Do you disagree? Let me know in the comments below. Leave a like if you enjoyed the video and don't forget to subscribe to the channel. And I'll see you guys next time. Bye!